back to another special episode of the Epic Experiment Podcast. It's episode 160. I'm your host, Bruce, and I'm joined on the line once again by Sneaky Pete to chat all things Magic the Gathering. How are you tonight, Pete?
Well, we're recording this episode because my buddy's soft and he hurt himself moving filing cabinets, so he told me he bruised his ribs. So he's like, I can't get together and eat pizza with you. So now I get to, eat proverbial pizza with my friend Bruce as we talk about Magic.
Your friend, I'm sorry.
Soft as Purell, my friend. Soft as Purell.
Real friends show up and eat pizza with their buddy.
He doesn't play Magic. He's like, I just hurts too much, and I'm like, well, then how the do you talk? Excuse my language. How are you talking? Like, he got me so upset that I actually cursed on the podcast.
I gotta go and edit that out now. That's fine.
Yeah, I was like, dude, what the heck? So luckily he doesn't play Magic. He never will see this until I'm like 50. So I was just like, dude, what's wrong with you, man? Like, this is why I play Magic, and this is why I just, play Magic, because at least I know what I'm getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, like when I used to referee hockey in audience back many years ago before I became a Magic person, I refereed a lot of hockey, and I definitely remember getting a rib, like a slap shot off the ribs, and because the defenseman wasn't looking,
just go right out there
and just ripped it off my rib cage. And I remember lying on the ice for, probably good 3 or 4 minutes, wondering when the air was going to come back to my lungs.
Yeah.
And when I got up, I was able to resume the game through much discomfort. But then afterwards, you know what I did? I didn't go home. I went out with my buddies and went to the bar. We got pizza and we got some wobbly pops and it was all good. So now my whole right side of my rib cage turned black and blue from that one, because that was a bit of a howitzer, but it was I mean, I wasn't about to let the fact that I took a clapper off the ribs keep me from going out and seeing my friends. So to Pete's buddy, shame.
I just thought that was funny.
You got soft, young blood. You got soft.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, so to keep it positive today, because we love to show our love for this game. This is our first episode of the new year. I'm glad everybody made it in one piece up to this point. We're going to start off with one of my favorite segments, Bruce. Garbage or Great. What do you have for us?
I love this way. All right, so tonight I found this really sweet card. I found Brass's Tunnel Grinder. So the reason I was looking at this is because I was looking to do some adjusting to my Megatron deck. Megatron is a Mardu-colored commander that cares a lot about other artifacts and doing stuff. And there's quite a bit of graveyard recursion to it. So I found this card and I kind of liked it. So 2 and a red legendary artifact. When Brass's Tunnel Grinder enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. And then at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a board counter on Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more board counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. When you transform it, it turns into a land called Tecutlan the Searing Rift. I hope I pronounced that properly. But it's a legendary land in a cave. Taps for red. Whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by a Tecutlan the Searing Rift, discover X, where X is that spell's mana value.
Mm-hmm.
So this does a lot of things that I really like. And I think it's probably a bit of an underrated gem. So, but before I go and tell you why I'm excited for it, what do you think about this card? Like, just looking at it, does it sort of, does your brain get going on this? Is there anything that gets you excited about this one, or was it just me being a grumpy old man in my house in the snow and cold here in Canada?
So this card, right? When I saw it spoiled, and then when I saw it played in arena, and then I saw it, played in paper. I think it is one of the sleeper cards of this set. It's not going to go up in price. Like, I don't think it's going to be very expensive. Similar to a few weeks ago when we talked about the other 3 mana, a bomb flipped cave card, the Mezantol or whatever, the one that flips to add mana equal to the permanents in your graveyard. This card impacts the game as soon as it hits the field and resolves. 1, it gives you card advantage or card selection. Well, it doesn't really give you selection, but it gives you card advantage because you draw an additional card. Even if you only pitch 1. And then it also can be enabled pretty quickly and flipped pretty quickly. So I think it fits in a lot of red decks that need the card advantage. I know for a fact I probably need to add this to my Jax's deck because I would literally enable this immediately every time. And then the only like downside, I guess, is you can't storm off of it because I wish it just said it whenever you cast a spell instead of just a permanent. Because the way red is moving, a lot of red cards like in Commander, they're playing more non-creature spells for specific effects that they need to get there. You know what I mean? Discover
I
is a
do.
nice chaos thing for red, but like the strongest creature I can think of still dwarfs like a green creature, like on average. You know what I mean? Even though it's a good card, like Terror of the Peaks, 5/4 for 5, right? Yes, it burns you out, but it can get respawned, it can get killed pretty quickly. Where there are 5 mana 6/6s with trample now. You know what I mean? There are 4 mana 6/6s. There are 3 mana 6/6s that can speed up the game a little bit. And there's a 2 mana 8/8 that I love. But that's a
No.
different story.
Yeah.
Overall, I think I wouldn't play it in a deck that has better card draw, but I would play it in a deck that needs the card draw. And I really like Descent as a mechanic. So overall, I would play this card, Bruce, if that means anything.
Well, I think that's where I concluded too. So I was looking at this. I'm like, seems really good. It's the sort of effect that I'm looking for in a lot of my decks too. And I think it's comparable to Valakut Awakening, which is same mana cost. Only difference is Valakut Awakening is an instant. So you have the option of playing it end of turn, before you untap, dump the cards that are of no use to you in your hand and get some good stuff. Valakut Awakening's 128,000 decks. Like it's in a
That's
lot
a
of
lot.
decks.
Yeah, and a lot of people like it's hard to find the copy of it, right? Because everybody holds on to their copy.
Yeah. So this plays a similar role. Now, and I think it might be even be an upgrade because you get the option of the discard effects and then the draw, and you can even flip it into a land. Where Valakut Awakening, you're kept to commit to either playing it as one or the other. And so I kind of like this option where I get the best of both worlds. And then the extra discover stuff is just sort of a nice value piece that you can utilize. But it plays really well in like discard or reanimator decks. It plays well in Descend. It plays well with artifacts. So I can think of like a number of decks that I run already that probably need this effect. So Riel would love this. Megatron needs this. Like you said, Jaxus would use this to great effect. I think this is a really good card. I think people should be playing it too. So I think here on the show, folks, this is getting 2 thumbs up from everybody. And if you haven't gone and pulled it out or found a copy for cheap, do so now because I think you're going to find that you get a good bang for your buck right now.
So here's the top commanders real quick. And I'm not surprised by a few of them. So you got Tetsun, Gnome Champion. That's the commander flip craft guy because you're crafting artifacts. So that makes sense because you discard your crappy artifacts to craft with. Inti's one of my favorite cards, and I love it dearly because you're discarding. Whenever you discard, you get to get card advantage. Zawoya, which we covered when I did that budget deck. Saheeli, which makes copies, which seems very strong. Because you can even make a copy of it and then have it get sacrificed anyway. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Get extra card advantage. Ogier, because it needs card draw, that makes sense. Admiral Brass, I don't know why, but maybe because it's in the precon. I don't know why you would play it in that when you have blue, but it is what it is. And Pizantal, or other ones. There's Laura Croft.
Yeah. Sorry, Pat Lanza. The Pat Lanza.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to go.
Discover. Yeah, Discover. It's almost like if they're making it Discover. There's some other ones. There's some neat ones. I encourage you to check this out, Bruce, later. But there's a lot of different commanders. So it's like cool because the card gives flexibility instead of like only showing up in like a life gain deck if it's a life gain card, right? Like that's kind of cool.
I think we call that open-ended synergy. It has a lot of open-ended synergy.
So I like that a lot. The next card is a little bit more of you have to build around it, but I think it's great for 20 cents. So I'm going to read this card to you, Bruce. Let me know what you think. Let me just pull this up because the name is tricky. It's one of the Lord of the Rings cards. So
yeah, some of those are a mouthful, aren't they? What do we got here?
We've got. Hold on, I apologize. We have Gwaiir. Gwaiir? Is it Gwaiir?
I think it's Gwaiir, but Gwaiir. Let's go with that.
Gwaiir, greatest of the Eagles. All right, so this is 4 colors and a white, so 5 mana. A legendary creature, bird, noble. So you could build around it if you wanted to do mono white. And it has flying. It's a 5/5. When it attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying, and whenever this creature attacks, target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn.
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest, Pete. I have this deck. This comes right in the pre-con, so I know you recently opened yours, and we're looking at the cards. I have it. I've had it since the summertime, and I've upgraded, here and there with some neat new toys. I discounted this card when I opened the box because I read the first 2 sets of lines flying, and then the giving another attacking creature flying. I'm like, man, that is nice. I never actually read the third portion of that text box that says if you gain 3 life, which that deck does very easily because of all the food production that is in the deck. And then it just generates endless amounts of flying value. And like 3/3 flyers are not something to mess with. Those are real creatures. And they're very, very powerful. So I really like this particular. What is happening here? There it is. I really like this particular card, and also it says at the beginning of each end step. So if you can trigger life gain on each turn, you can make 4 eagles in the course of a turn of the table. That's a lot of value to be had for no additional, mana necessarily. So, I'm a big fan. I think the base stats alone, 5 mana, 5/5 flyer, are strong. And then with that much additional text, I'm also like of the opinion that this is 20 cents well invested. And if you're playing a deck that has the capacity to gain any amount of life, then this is probably something you should be looking at.
Yeah, so like when I build decks with life gain, it's hard, right? Because you have 3 sort of tiered sort of things you're looking for. You got things that actually gain you life in some capacity. You have payoffs, and then you have like card advantage or whatever that would do something with the life gain, like some sort of finisher or some sort of way to like create advantage for yourself. So Gwaiir checks 2 of those boxes. It's a payoff, and it also creates outward value for you over time if people leave it unchecked. And it's easy to enable. So like the other thing people forget, I think, when life gain is like you can gain all the life you need, but like if you're not doing anything with that stuff, you're not doing anything really. You're just sitting there and like layering triggers, which anyone can really do. I'm not discounting people who play life gain. I have no problem with the Oloro decks. I'll just kill you with infect. But but yeah, you like that. So
sorry,
I don't care.
I'm like I'll just kill you with infect. I'm like, oh, that's aggressive. Pete just got angry. Okay. But yes, your point is well taken.
But overall, what I'm trying to say is like that card checks 2 boxes for life gain, but we've never seen in many cards before. The Gaffer does another one because it gives you card advantage if you gain 3 or more life. And then there's like weird cards out there that can actually do this for you in weird ways. So like there's a card called Archon of Redemption. It's a 3/4 flyer for 5. It says whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you can gain life equal to its power. So hypothetically, you at the beginning of the end step, you make a 3/3, you gain 3 life, it triggers the Archon, and it triggers Gwaiir again, potentially. It stacks
you only
itself.
You only get one trigger on an end step.
You only get one end step trigger, but what I'm trying to say is like you could stack it in such a way where you can play some weird cards and you can gain life in that sense, or sack of food or whatever. But I don't know. I feel like there's creative ways you can pull this card out and like do some weird things with it. So
I really like it. I think it's excellent. What I like about it best is oftentimes the payoff for life gain decks is that you end up going tall. So you're a Johnny Pridemates or your Trellisaras or things that just go make really big things. And the fact that you can go wide and trigger it multiple times in a turn of the table really appeals to me. And at 20 cents, you probably should be playing this near the top end of your curve.
yeah, I think it fits perfectly. I'm glad you said Trelasara because I think it actually literally fits perfectly in a green-white deck, just because of what it does. Because green-white has the access to trample, but sometimes it doesn't have access to evasion, so it's difficult sometimes to get your big fatties through for damage. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think overall you can't lose with this particular sort of effect. But
I will agree. I think the card is excellent. All right, good, excellent. All right, let's move on to some segment 2 tonight, Pete. So, audience, recently Pete and I had the opportunity to play some Magic here around in the holidays. We had a little bit of downtime, and we found some friends, and we were able to get ourselves a pod set
we
up on
found some
Spelltable.
friends. We don't really have friends, I
Well,
guess.
sometimes my friends are busy, and that's what they're
Yeah,
all
same with
they're all
mine.
dads, they got kids, and
Yeah.
so it's hard to get a pod lined up. Even if I might want to play, my buddies may not be available. So we got everyone lined up to play, and we had ourselves one heck of a fun night. We played for 3 hours, audience, and we had 3 games in 3 hours, and no one left salty, no one left upset. Everybody had fun. It was among the best gaming experiences I've had in a very long time. So
Well, that's
we
good.
thought we just recap that quickly to maybe share a way to help other players recreate that and have a fun opportunity to play with their friends, whether you're playing in paper or you're playing over Spelltable. It
Right.
really was a really fun night. I don't know what your thoughts were on the whole evening, Pete, because you were also on the call. But what did you think of it?
Yeah. So the first game, just to get through it, I tested a deck and so did Bruce. So that was a nice added layer of interesting because we had two guys we played with. One guy, he only has a few decks and um they're a little bit lower on the end of things. And then the other guy, I've seen him play a few times. Uh and he played a deck I had actually never seen him play before. So that was kind of cool. Um Bruce's deck was 5 color. It was really interesting. Mine was a Xenagos deck, and it was weird because our play styles for all of our decks were sort of slower than what I've seen the last few months. So not that we meant to be slow, we didn't necessarily have a curve that was like really like slow. Wasn't really battle cruiser either. It was just putting pressure and releasing pressure was different, like the way we pressured each other. So like I mean, Bruce, you were making fat cards, you were doing a lot of incubate stuff, right? Like everybody
Yeah.
was sort of developing their board in different ways, but it created an interesting dynamic. You didn't really know who to swing at because of that too.
Yes, and when we ended up committing to swinging, the game advanced very quickly because we were taking huge swings at each other, just haymakers back and forth. So, before we go too far, big shout out to Nick, who has been on the show before, and my friend Dave,
Let's
who
go.
is an avid listener. So both Dave and Nick were on the call with us, and so
Thanks, boys.
Nick was on Corvold.
Yep.
Dave was on the white red Strixhaven precon, but he doesn't play Osgear. He plays Alabu. And that Alabu deck has been sneaky good on more than one occasion and
Yeah.
just burdinated the whole table to pieces. So the deck's nothing to sniff at. And Pete, Pete was on Xenagos, and I was playing Rekka Rumel, Biologist, which is a weird sliver colored themed commander from the Sliver Precon, but I'm playing it as a 5 color incubate deck,
Yeah.
and which is super bizarro, but it seems to work. I'm gonna keep trying it out. But yeah, no, it went really, really well. And like you said, Pete said, like the choice. I think one of the things I really appreciate was the philosophy of deck construction across all 4 decks seemed to match. There was not a lot of through like limited to no tutors. There was
And it wasn't even by
reliance.
design, really, right?
No, it wasn't. It just seemed
It was
they
just
lined
how the
up really
games
well.
went. Yeah.
Yeah,
The commanders were pretty evenly matched, like out of the gate.
yeah. Yeah, and the budget of all 4 decks seemed to be commensurate, so that there was nobody who was playing, docksides and mana crypts and stuff that like turned the game into a sprint. Everyone was doing, we played 2 mana rocks, we played powerful things, but it
Yeah.
wasn't played. It was played at a tempo where everybody was able to at least have an opportunity to respond to it. And I think that interaction piece was what really created a dynamic that was fun and engaging, because there was interplay to be had between the players. It wasn't just
there was
one player.
politicking. There
Yeah, there
was
was some
avid
politicking.
politicking. There was like comments that were hilarious. Like Dave, like your buddy Dave was like, Peter, how does it feel to be 3 against 1 and you're still winning the game? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Normally it doesn't work out that way. But it was just because at the time I was swinging for like 12 damage a turn with some silly trampler or something. Or like I played a creature that was like a 6/6 flyer, so I was swinging with 12 in the air or something like that.
Yes, and on top of it, some of the commentary was very on point, to say the least. Yes. No, so for sure, like that definitely made for good interplay, good banter between the players. I also think that everyone's threat assessment was largely on point. There was nobody who did anything that was designed to screw someone over to the detriment of the pod. And King Make. It was that's the biggest threat of the table right now. I have to address
it. Yeah,
let's deal with it,
sure.
and then we will deal with the next threat as it presents itself, which I think is something that often gets overlooked in all
especially in faster games. Especially in
Mhm.
games that go really fast, because it's like people played all these things by turn 4, and you're like, who's actually the threat? The guy with 7 mana rocks, or the guy with that Haymaker card that he still has resolved? So, yeah. I agree.
I think the threat assessment was quite on point, and no one was salty about the threat assessment that under. So it came to a point in the first game where Pete had swung out at me and delivered quite a chunk of damage, but he left his shields down, and I was going next. Yeah, well, so what do you? And so it was I was going next, and I said, well, if I don't swing at Pete, Pete's going to knock me out next turn. So I'm gonna have to swing at Pete. And Pete, like, you got it. You weren't upset by the choice. Like, you understood what was happening. So
I totally understand.
So I took my board and I swung at Pete, and I ended up knocking Pete out of the game, as the first casualty of the game, which Pete could have been salty about that choice, but when everyone looks around the table and goes, Pete's got giant monsters. His commander is an indestructible god.
Yeah.
The only way to really address it is to remove the player. So player removal it was. And so there would have been pods and situations where people would have been really upset by the choice, but all 4 of us understood this is how this has to go right now. It's unfortunate for Pete, but threat assessment at the table is telling everyone here, and everyone would make the same choice. It's like if the choice is either between me and you, it's gonna be me, and it's gonna be me. Sorry, little ends.
No, the other interesting thing, and I think we touched on this briefly before we started recording, just our reflections from playing these games, was every commander was 5 or greater, and also like our swing, like the swing of momentum was like a pendulum. It was very even, instead of like it being like a landslide on one side or an avalanche on the other. It felt like everybody was in the game at every point for the most part, maybe except Dave. But I'm just kidding. But
well, Dave was in that first game.
It was very close. It was very close. He almost
Dave
killed
was
him.
in it until Dave was in it until his board got wiped, and then he had a hard time rebounding. Which that happens in a game of Commander sometimes.
Right.
Where if
we had to do it though, we really had to do it, but just because of the advantage both of you and him had in that
absolutely.
Point.
There's no doubt about it, because Alabu, he had a number of artifacts on the table, and he was going to just be able to start removing things at will if we didn't remove his board state, and there was no doubt about it. And I think Dave also understood. He saw the danger that he was presenting, and so by doing that, Dave was set back enough that other people could take over the game. So again, threat assessment was on point, and no one was upset by the choice to enact that strategy at the table. So
what else did you notice? Well, like I said, throughout
the whole night, there was, like you said, a lot of our commanders were 4 mana value or higher commanders, like all 3 games. There was one player played a Kumbal, one player had a Riel, and everything else was 4 mana or above. Which I think is probably a healthy place for to have a commander. I think when commanders start coming in at 2 and 3 mana that provide really significant and impactful benefit to the board, you start running in a situation where, well, let's be real here. It's almost too easy to replay them. So if they get killed, they come back too quickly. When you have a 4 or 5, maybe 6 mana commander, if they get removed, like this is a big cost. And so I think it ends up creating a more level playing field. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like things were more equitable generally all the way around, which made for some better dynamic at the table. If someone had been sitting on a 2 or a 3 mana commander that was super redundant or recursive and like able to come back all the time, then I think it wouldn't have felt the same way at the table. At least that's my perception. I mean, because in the past when we've played games and someone's sitting there on a 2 mana commander, and you're like Sithis as an example.
Sure.
Sithis to me is an example of a commander that at 2 mana generates more value than it probably is due.
Sure. Yeah, it's a snowball effect, right?
Very much so.
No doubt about
and
that.
So, and even once you remove a Sithis, it's able to come back so rapidly that they're able to get their engine back online. Where if you play a 4 mana commander, then you really got to choose if to stick it. And I think if everybody's doing that, everybody's sticking a 4 mana or more commander, the battlefield is a lot more equitable, and I think that results in better gameplay.
So here's another example. So sometimes commanders are 3 mana costed, but they're 2 mana costed, but they're not actually that cost. What I'm trying to say is like the ancient one, my deck, the ancient one, it's a 2 mana commander, but it actually doesn't do anything until like turn 6. If you think about it, because you cast it and then you activate its ability to mill yourself or mill somebody else. Same with like a Curie. A Curie is 3 mana, but it's an equipment commander, so the equip cost makes it 5 mana or 6 mana. You know what I mean? Because you cast it and then you try to equip something to it or something else, and then you're swinging to get card advantage. Or like Killing is 2 mana, but he's actually 2 mana, right? Because 2 mana and everything costs 2 less to target. So I'm playing Ars in this particular build. He's impactful as soon as he hits the board. So what we're trying to say is like there's a difference between a commander that's cheaply costed, but its effect might cost more. So it'll actually make its sort of turn order and what it does impact the game later in the game. That unless you're playing like CDH, which obviously that's a different animal itself. Like a card I want to highlight real quick, Inti. The 2 mana 2/2 that gives something trample when you discard a card when you attack and you exile the top card. That card is really, really strong. And you could build a really strong mono red commander with it, with some of the best creatures in Magic that are Eldrazi or that are, have haste or whatever. So that's what we're getting at in terms of a lot of the 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana plays we did were like mana dorks, or they were set up for like later plays. So our games are very close because most of our curve out was around the same time. Some people, they curve out faster than others, and then games become an arms race where someone gets bullied out of the game because they're too fast for the table. So go ahead, Bruce.
So our experience, one of the reasons we had a show a couple of weeks ago about mulliganing was a direct reflection of this. That Pete and I had played, and I with some other friends on another server, and my experience that night was that my decks didn't match the rate of curve out that other players had, and that I was behind and playing catch up all the time. So this case, I wasn't having to play catch up. I felt I was at parity with the rest of the table, making my experience, and I think the experience of everybody, because I think everybody was about at par. In terms of where they were on their curve out. So it just, that's something to look for when you're looking to play, have that rule zero conversation. Sometimes it's helpful. I mean, obviously it's not just what is the mana value of your commander, but have a conversation like, okay, like my commander is going to come down on turn 2 or turn 3 without fail. So you need to be prepared for what that looks like. And I mean, that's that issue with that Sithis deck. Like, if Sithis comes down on turn 2, what are your choices? Well, if you're like me and you're developing your board, you can either choose to remove the Sithis or you can develop your board. Well, you're going to try and build your board, but knowing full well that you're giving the Sithis player an opportunity to start their engine and get going. So it's just something to have build into that rule zero conversation. It's not just how many turns does it take you to win. It's not just how much fast mana do you have. It's not just how do you win. Do you win by creature combat? But it's also looking at when does my commander come down and when do I get my engines online? And I think that's an important part of that conversation.
Yeah, just to bounce off of that, I mean, familiarity with who you're playing with, or what you're playing against. You're not going to know every single card. Like, I still have to ask questions a lot because I have friends who play some really weird and interesting things. I have a guy who plays a snow deck. That's the Bant snow deck. I have another guy who plays Demon Tribal with weird demons that are from like the older sort of side of Magic, like from the last 15 years or so. So like sometimes you got to ask questions. Sometimes I don't even know like what these Doctor Who cards say. You know what I mean? And I have to ask questions multiple times because I'm like, we have to make a villainous choice. What do you mean we have to make a villainous choice? Like, I don't know. This sort of stance is like Xenagos, you kind of know what you're getting, right? I'm going to play big stompy creatures. You don't really know what creatures I'm going to play because I build it differently probably than the next Joe. But, we have a general idea. Or like Rukamal, once you tell me like, oh, I'm playing Incubate Tribal. Oh, I have a general idea of what I might see now that I know that you're playing Incubate Tribal. So we had a clear sort of pathway a few nights ago with like, we had a general sense of like, okay, this is what it looks like by turn 5, what this commander might do or what this deck might do. So I'm grateful for that experience too, because, we were able to see, we were able to clearly sort of have an idea of like, okay, how can I win and how can I stop my opponent, but I don't need to necessarily blow them out to win. So,
yeah. So I think the one sort of X factor that could have been was like you said, we knew that like we going into it, we were 2 decks that were kind of unknown, but then having a Corvold deck, which has the propensity to be very, very powerful, very powerful. And in the end, Nick did win, but it wasn't, an overwhelming explosion of sack a million things, take a million game actions, kill the table for a billion damage. Like it was a very measured win, and Nick was full value for it. But we know, but the familiarity of your play group goes a long way in this conversation because we were familiar with Nick enough to know that Nick is going to play powerful cards, but Nick's doesn't have this purring like a Ferrari, right? Like it's not like
he
it's going to
played
be
Necrogenesis, he played Mimic Vat, he played some really neat cards I haven't seen in years, like literal years. So it was great to see that occur.
Absolutely.
And the game could have been different, right? The game easily could have been different. Like if I had targeted him first instead of you, then he probably would have died to me faster than he would have been able to win the game. Because, once I had Vigor out there, I could have smacked him with the dragon and then he would have had to choose the block or, in response, he takes a bunch of damage. So, yeah, I mean, any of those games could have went differently. The only game I really was out of the game at that point was when I played the Ogier deck because Rurik Thar and Kambal are antitheses of that particular strategy. So that was the only time where I literally killed myself with a browbeat, which I thought was hilarious. So like the impact was awesome because like I did that and people were like, "Are you sure you want to cast that spell?" And I'm like, "Yes, I literally don't care. I'm at 5 life and I'm taking 6 and I'm dying. I'm not letting any of you screwballs get me. I'm getting myself." You know what I mean? So it was fun, right? Because I did get eliminated very early in the second game too. But again, like Kambal wasn't super stacksy, which was nice to see. Rurik Thar was really memey. I really wasn't sure what was going to happen with that deck. And then Riel, you played Optimus. Optimus Prime just went freaking off again. Because it was just like, I don't have an Abrade in my mono red deck because I put it in the other deck, and that's my fault for doing that. So, not that I would be able to draw into it, but in that game I wasn't able to draw anything. But
your Abrade would have been of no value because Padim gave all my artifacts hexproof. So and Padim doesn't even die to an Abrade. So
Yeah, so even if I blew up all your stuff that one time, Optimus Prime would flip, and then you'd get your stuff back anyway. So yeah, no, I think overall though, like the games are great. The last game was crazy because I mean, Bruce, that game was just something else. With how
Well, the
I was mana screwed first, so they were kind enough to give me some extra lands to get me back into the game. But okay, I
well
guess from your
the so,
perspective, what happened? Because
I thought I was in a decent spot, and then Nick cast a really interesting spell. I don't remember what it was called, but it basically forced you to sacrifice lands equal number of cards in your hand. So it is
ruination or something.
a
It's like
mass land destruction spell, and wow, did it just it made threw everyone for a loop. I'm like, oh my, what are we doing here? But because it didn't destroy creatures on the board. So
no,
everyone had to go and rebuild their hand or their mana base from nothing.
it was called
Um,
Thoughts of Ruin. It's an 85-cent card from Saviors of Kamigawa. So it's 2 colorless, 2 red. Each
yeah.
player sacrifices a land for each card in your hand.
So it was super impactful as a card, and what it allowed Pete to utilize other resources. So he had access to convoke spells and to chorus of
Elven
elves or
Chorus.
elven
Elven
chorus. Yeah,
Chorus.
and that really allowed Pete to get himself pulling ahead because otherwise we were
Like
up
2
to
lands.
we were pretty even,
Yeah,
except for Pete was struggling with it with the land with drawing some land.
right.
So this land mass land destruction spell, which actually was a I thought was an excellent strategic choice by Nick. And I was like, there was no salt generated by it whatsoever. It was actually like this play makes sense in this context.
He played the card
Now,
wrong, by the way. He
did he?
played the card wrong because he had no cards in hand, so we wouldn't have sacked any lands. It says each player sacrifice a land for each card in your hand.
Oh, we did misplay
Like
it.
for each card in our hands. So like we would sack a land for each
Oh,
card we had in our hand.
yeah. So that's
So
funny.
we messed up because that wouldn't have even done anything. Because so
Well, yeah,
basically, for context, Nick played the card as his last card in hand, expecting it to be that like it would be it wasn't symmetrical, but it is a symmetrical land destruction effect in a weird way. If he had like 8 cards in hand, each player would sack 8 lands. If he had no cards in hand, each player would sack no lands.
oh,
So he
that
had no
changes
cards in hand.
so much.
Even so, I had too much value anyway, I think, at that point to actually
I think
like
you
be
were winning.
stopped.
Yeah,
Because I had treasures and stuff, but I love that deck because it can come back from stuff like that, right? Like
yeah.
it can come back from resource denial because I think tapping creatures for mana that normally are not allowed to be tapped for mana is neat. Like it's just a neat way to like play the game. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It was interesting to say
It
the
was
least.
it was a really good game, and you're right. And misplaying the card like that's actually kind of
It's
funny.
fine. That's
So
really
anyway,
funny.
so long and the short of it, we had a really fun night. We had a great time. So takeaways there for you as an audience. There, if you're going to sit down to play with your friends, like really try and sit down and cultivate what your game night you want to look like when you go to play, so that everybody is more or less on the same page. If you want to play super powerful stuff, you can have super like part of the appeal of CDH is everybody's on the same page playing the same sorts of stuff. Casual, there's a whole lot more variance, but if you have
Right.
that conversation, then you can still have a really fun, really great game night,
Mhm.
and have a situation where people don't end up leaving the table feeling upset about the experience. So I think that's the takeaway we want you guys to all enter into 2024 with, so that you guys can make sure that when you guys sit down to play next, you're having fun to play with your friends. Which I think
Yeah,
brings us to segment 3, I think, which is
sure.
going to be some resolutions to help
Yeah.
us
New Year's
as Magic
resolutions for
players.
us.
Yeah, for us. And then maybe
Yeah.
you as an audience, you
Oh,
can
well, there you go.
what you like to. So, what do you think are some resolutions that we should have there, Pete? Like, what's like
Yeah.
think about
So
all the things that 2024 is going to bring. What do we want to do as Magic players to for this great game?
So I'm gonna just highlight them first because then we'll talk about them, I think, in detail. And I think it'd be nice to
Sure.
just highlight them, boom, boom, and then overview. So um, the first one, which we talked about earlier, is play more expensive costing commanders for greater and see how that works for you. I get it, like Sithis is really consistent, and I appreciate that. What are the other 2 mana popular ones? There's Thrasios and Partner. There's Timna and whatever. There's other cheap ones I can't think of at this time, but like
Giada's a 2 mana one
yeah,
that
thank you.
seems like a particularly egregious offender.
Um,
Satora Umazawa is kind of ridiculous.
It's very strong. Yeah. So these are these cards like Ishin. They're very, very strong 3 mana or less commanders.
Nagila.
Nagila, yeah. So these even I'm trying to think. Even like Omnath, like 3 mana green mono green stompy Omnath can be very, very powerful. But yeah, I think playing a little bit more expensive can be very very beneficial to like challenge yourself to ramp out to that card or see the value of it. Playing more 2 mana rocks in general, especially in decks that need it. So those white decks, those black decks, and those blue decks, especially, and red, either monocolored or 2-colored, that might need a rock to play a card. I've really come up really highly, Bruce, on the 2 mana rocks that come in tap. Star Compass, the 2 mana Cold Steel Heart, the 2 mana stones from they're old, but they were reprinted in Baldur's Gate. The one that for each color, the diamond and
The diamonds, yeah.
the diamonds and stuff. I've really come up on those cards, especially in decks like that are Orzhov, or decks that are Dimir, or decks that are more control based that need a little bit of extra ramp on turn 2 or 3 or 4 to play more things at a specific rate. It's really come up for me. Cutting more staples for jank budget options of the same rate. We talked about this earlier tonight and just now anyway. I'm cutting those tutors for those weird cards that are 4 mana or 5 mana seem to be more fun. Commander can be more social and more fun in general. We'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a second. And then finally, just playing more games with each other, me and Bruce. I mean, we really want to get into the habit of having a game night together. So we're hoping that can happen. And Bruce, what are your thoughts overall? I think we can dive deeply now after this sort of thing. What do you think about this sort of overview?
Well, I really think that I really do think that the example we had from this past weekend when we played was very much that the higher mana value commanders, within reason, of course. Like, I don't think you're going to play an 8 or 9 drop. Like, 8 and 9 drops are probably beyond where you want to be. But 4, 5, and 6 feels like a sweet spot for commanders that you can really do some really interesting things with them. And if everybody's agrees that this is sort of how they want to play the game, then you can have a lot of fun. So I think that is, pardon me, I have the hiccups right now. But I think that is something that I think when I'm looking to build new commanders or I'm looking to retool decks, maybe the framework of my deck is good, but I don't really like my commander that accompanies it. Maybe I can look for another option that has a slightly higher mana value at 4 or 5. That might be, more interesting to play than what I, currently running. So I just think that is probably the one of the biggest takeaways I've had, because I think when everyone sort of agrees that higher mana value commander, that powerful engine piece is fun to have, then it's going to be resulting in everybody on more equitable footing, and I think that results in better competitive balance and more fun.
Yeah, and then just the way that we look at the game, I think like we should look at it as a way to like test weird cards, right? Like in a sense of being casual format, the point of it is to play these weird cards no one's ever seen before played, and they make them work, in my opinion. That's how I look at decks now, right? Is like, I'm gonna build a deck. I want to play this really strange card that I just want to see it work once, because that'll be a victory for me, like a personal victory.
So, absolutely. No, I would agree. So this next one, like the points 2 and 3, I think go fairly similarly for me. Is like I want to play. Maybe I'm a little bit of a boomer, but I want to play like 3 mana rocks that are interesting. So I think this File of Galadriel is an example of a card that I think is really interesting. 3 mana rock, but if you would draw a card when you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards instead. So you're getting a really interesting effect attached to your card. You can tap to add mana of any one color, meaning you get a rock that's, all 5 colors, And then if you regain life while you have 5 or less, you can gain twice that much life instead. So you have a 3-mana rock that's got that's sort of janky and outside of a lot of options. So you're being more responsible playing a rock. Got more useful versatility than just being like a manolith or a Darksteel Ingot.
Right.
And I think so. You covering off two of those in one fell swoop. And I think that leads into the next one, which, like you said, is like, it's about attitude. If you're the attitude you're bringing is to try and engender cool, interesting conversation and fun, and show that you're looking to explore, all the cool aspects of this game. Like that card that Nick played. Yes, we misread it, but it's going to be a card we're going to remember for a really long time.
Or
because
how about Submerge? He played Submerge like 4 times against you, which was
it's
hilarious in
true.
the same game.
So most of our audience doesn't know what Submerge does. Let's read the Submerge for our audience, because I had never seen it until. So Submerge is 4 and a blue for an instant. And it says, if an opponent controls a forest and you control an island, you may play Submerge without paying its mana cost, and then put target creature on top of its owner's library. And so Nick was able to cast the spell repeatedly against me, and I just kept getting time walked by it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I needed to put my commander back on top of my deck. And I was like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? So the net result was actually really, really potent for a pretty unusual card to be played. And it's from Nemesis and is it's $5 because it very rarely ever sees the light of day, but it makes for a really interesting thing. And it was like, oh, look at that look at that sentence starter, or that conversation starter, because we've got this really neat, interesting option. We had fun having a laugh over it. Like, look at this card. What does this do?
Yeah.
And I really think that created a positive atmosphere around the table, instead of saying, oh no, you targeted my thing. Like, no, you targeted my commander with a really interesting and unique card that I have never seen before in my whole life.
How about when Nick played Backdraft Dragon, which is one of my favorite like dragons in Magic. It's such a cool card anyway, but he made it even more cool because he made it do like 25 or 29 damage in a turn, ridiculously enough. Like, it's a 4/4, and he was able to make it massive somehow by casting all these spells for flashback, and it was just very silly. Or like, how about I played that dragon? It's a 6/6 that makes treasures or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was a 12/12 on like turn 7 or something. I just played this big dumb dragon for 2 mana because Bruce had like 5 incubate tokens or something. So it was like kind of cool to see it, like these weird cards we don't see every day perform.
Absolutely. It really created some really neat game states and some really good conversation and fun. And as we laughed, like, oh my goodness, only in Commander could you pull this shenanigan off right here.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's
it's those weird things that we do that are memorable. Like my friends and I that I play with in paper when I'm visiting family here in Pennsylvania, we'd be still talking about stupid things we've done to each other, like in games, and it still becomes a topic that we bring it back to the table the next time we play with each other. We're like, oh, you playing that deck? Are you gonna try to do that stupid thing again? Because it's like, it's fun to see. It's fun to see it like go. So I think there's different like maturity levels to this game in regards to how we view it, right? Because when I first started, I would get frustrated about everything, like getting targeted. But then I got into like this phase where I wanted to just be super competitive, right? I wanted to build really, very like streamlined decks that just would win very consistently, like combos and stuff. And then I got super bored with that because that is kind of boring inherently. So then I got into like this weird mix of jank and consistency where I'm challenging myself now to play cards that probably are unplayable mostly and see if they actually can be played and actually work. And it's been a fun ride, you know what I mean? Like in the last few years, thinking about the game in a different way, and still trying to keep pace with this arms race that we've seen the last few months. So
absolutely, not just months. I'd say since the year of Commander, for sure. And then I think I think generally as a rule, I think everybody should be looking to play more games with their friends.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think this game at its core, like we said, is designed to be, particularly Commander, was designed to be social and fun. And
Get a
whatever you and your friend,
pizza. Get a pizza. Do something simple.
I don't even want to. I don't want to go make it that prescriptive. But so if you and your friends play CEDH and that's what you guys think is
That's
fun,
what I mean.
like you guys have fun at whatever way you like to have fun. But it's always more fun when you play with your friends. So, audience, if you're out there and it's been a little while since you played with your friends, and maybe like connect with them again and say, hey, like let's get together and let's do this. There's now more ways than ever to play, whether it's over Spelltable or Zoom or whatever you choose to use. There's lots of ways to play that way, or you can go play in paper, whatever you're comfortable with. And I think, the reality being is that, the more you play with your friends, the more you're going to enjoy the experience. So if you're getting tired of going to the local store and playing a bunch of people you're not familiar with, well, then maybe back it up and make a point of going to go play with some people you do know. Yeah. And like there's nothing wrong with, not venturing into the store or going into the store with some friends in mind to play with, so that you guys are set up to play. Like we're just gonna go sit down at a table and get this done. So I think that's our advice here, our resolutions for the new year for us. And hopefully everybody here has got some resolutions of their own. If you want to share them with us, our audience, we'd love to hear about them. What are your resolutions for 2024? You can reach out to us on all the social medias. They're all in our show notes. And we'd love to hear what resolutions you guys are planning for 2024. We've got our own. Sounds like we're looking to be silly and have some goofy experiences, and that's okay.
Amen.
But whatever you guys want. Well, you see, again, you're our very own dirtbag, Pete. You love to do the dirtbag thing.
But I pick you up off the ground when I push you off, off the swing or something.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
It's like the Sour Patch commercial where like the Sour Patch like stiff arms you and then takes your lunch money and then gives it back because it bought you a slice of pizza or something.
Yeah, there we go. It's like after you made me eat dirt, you gave me a popsicle. There we go.
Man, I feel like it's the highest compliment when you're removed super early from a game because you're like, wow, my deck actually did the thing it was supposed to do. Everybody was afraid of me, so they got better watch out next time.
True. It is true. Like we better have our heads on a swivel next time. Or
my one friend was upset once, like the last few weeks. He was upset because he got removed pretty quickly, and I was like, bro, like that's because we respect you. If we didn't respect you, we'd let you sit around with us for hours and not and do nothing. And we would just make you sit there and like suffer with us while we try to win the game. Mm-hmm. It's a respect thing. So just remember, it's a respect thing if you get eliminated. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It shows people care about you, Bruce.
they do. And they share the pain, and sharing is caring. So
there you go.
All right. Well, everybody, folks. Thanks for. I think that's going to be us wrapping it up tonight. Thanks very much for joining us for episode 160. If you guys, again, check us all out. We're on various Discord servers, your favorite podcast app, and all over social media. All that information is in the show notes. And I think with that,
take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your first week of January, and we'll see you next week at our regular scheduled time. We also will have some guest speakers starting next week, so please tune in for that. I feel like these conversations will be refreshing with an extra voice. So enjoy it. Thanks for keeping us in the loop with your feedback. Keep it coming, and we really appreciate all of you here on the Epic Experiment Podcast. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.